When you think of Roblox, what is the first thing that comes to mind? Maybe you think of the hours of fun you had playing it as a kid. Maybe you remember stealing your mom's credit card to buy Robux and drip your avatar out with the worst fit I've ever witnessed. For me personally, I usually think about all of the disgusting sexual deviance you can find, but that's not the subject of today's video. It's safe to say that Roblox horror games have become a very popular medium on the site, with horror titles that rival some new indie horror games such as Doors, and in some crazy instances, some talented creators make remakes of already existing horror games in Roblox, a very popular example being Five Nights at Freddy's, and my personal favorite example being Garten of Banban, a Roblox recreation of the original game that unironically has better optimization than the official, which is just hilarious. But with every good game comes the stinkers, and my personal favorite, the weird. The game we'll be looking at today is one of those weird games, a game that I can't quite figure out if I liked it because of its gameplay or just because of how goofy it is. Today we'll be diving into the world of Rainbow Friends, and hopefully we can answer the question, is Rainbow Friends actually good? Let's get started. Rainbow Friends is a mascot horror game similar to Poppy Playtime and Garten of Banban, but the way this game plays is incredibly different from both. While Poppy Playtime and Garten of Banban are single-player and, as some would put it, walking simulators, Rainbow Friends is actually a multiplayer experience, which is something I was definitely not expecting when going into it. The gameplay loop is basic, and by itself is actually pretty boring. But because of the multiplayer aspect, it actually makes this game a ton of fun, and actually adds a lot of replayability to a game that would otherwise be tossed in the bin. So, what actually happens in Rainbow Friends? Of course, with most indie horror games, there is a bit of lore. I did do no digging into the lore this time around, so expect a very surface level coverage of this game's story in this video. As you all know if you're familiar with my channel, I typically care way more about the gameplay than I do the story, even though I am a sucker for story. I'm a little for story, some would say. In Chapter 1, yes, by the way, this game is split into chapters like any classic mascot horror game. At the time of writing this, there are only 2 chapters out, and yes, I will be covering both in this video. Anyways, in Chapter 1, we and every other player are kids going on a school field trip. We are riding a bus to go to an amusement park, but some dickhead thought it would be really funny to change the sign and give the brain-dead bus driver the wrong directions. So, a few problems I have with the story already, and we've barely even started, bear with me. So you're telling me that the driver of this bus sees a split path. One path leads onto a non-paved path into the woods, and the other leads to the amusement park, clearly visible because of the giant Ferris wheel. And rather than opening their fucking eyes, they instead choose to just blindly follow the arrow on a sign, because I guess people nowadays are allergic to context clues. On top of that, another thing about this that doesn't make any sense, is this bus driver just raw dogging the way to this amusement park? I would imagine this isn't the first time kids in whatever school we're coming from have gone on this field trip, which would lead me to believe this bus driver, or at least other bus drivers that work with this school, have been to this amusement park before for other field trips and would therefore know the directions to it. But let's give them the benefit of the doubt and say that this is the first time this school is going to this amusement park for a field trip. Okay, fine. This bus driver doesn't have a map, no GPS, Google Maps, paper map. How has this bus driver gotten this far already if a simple sign pointing in a clearly wrong direction f***s them up this bad? This doesn't make sense. And this is not nitpicky, by the way. I don't care what you say. Nothing about this makes sense unless the bus driver is in on what's about to happen to these kids. I don't have any theories, but if I did, this bus driver would have something to do with it. But what does happen next? Well, the bus crashes and blows the f*** up. Excuse me? That's a bit insane. The kids get dragged off by who knows what, and to support my new bus driver theory, where's the bus driver in all of this? Who is the bus driver? You're telling me every kid on the bus survived a fiery explosion after a crash, yet the bus driver is nowhere in sight? What the f*** happened? Anyways, we wake up to some stranger telling us to help them. You see, this is a grueling problem he needs help with. This motherfucker has a stack of blocks, and they got knocked the f*** over. So, it's now our responsibility as 5th graders to find and pick up and restack all of this stranger's blocks. What does this have to do with anything? Seriously, I don't get it. The things we have to collect later make sense, but this block bullshit is stupid. Also, we end up being in this building for 4 days. 4 f***ing days. It's a whole school bus full of kids, and no cops came to come find and help them? It's a school field trip. Everyone in town should have known where these kids were going, and yet 4 full days with no help? Maybe the police are in on this bullshit too, who knows? With that out of the way, I can finally start talking about the gameplay of this game. I didn't plan on writing 2 full pages about the opening alone, but that's just what happened, so deal with it. As suspected, the goal of the first night in Rainbow Friends is to collect 24 blocks and restack them in the theater. I have no idea what this building we're in is supposed to be, but the central hub of it is called the theater. Every time you play, the blocks will be scattered in random locations around the building, so you can't memorize where they'll be when you play. A full lobby of players consists of 15, but usually when I was playing, we only got 10 to 13. This is a lot of players to find 24 items, and 24 items that aren't hidden and are just out in the open at that. This is where the threats of this game come into play, the Rainbow Friends. The only Rainbow Friend active on night 1 is Blue. I'm sure you've seen this big guy before. His mechanic is very simple. He will wander around the building searching for players. If you come into his line of sight, he will begin to chase you. He's about the same speed as you are, so if you're quick enough about turning corners, you can lose him pretty easily. But there are also a few other ways to avoid him. Let's start with the most obvious one. For some reason, each of these children has a box, and they unfold these boxes and hide underneath them like Solid Snake. What the f*** are we doing, guys? This is a problem I've had with a lot of recent mascot horror games. Why are all of the main tools used so stupid? Think about Poppy Playtime, where we're just supposed to think and believe that the grab pack is something that makes sense. Yeah, you can swing from the ceilings with it. Yeah, you can launch yourself into the stratosphere with it. Or the drone from Garden of Banban, which is all kinds of stupid. Go watch my first ever video on this channel where I talk about Garden of Banban to hear me rant about that stupid thing. And my most recent example, Moozy, where your main tool is a gun that you use one time throughout the entire game. And now Rainbow Friends has a box. What is going on? And let me tell you something really awesome. I was gonna save this as a surprise for later, but I just can't hold it in. This f***ing box that you get is the most overpowered thing throughout the entire game. It can deal with almost every single threat you come across with borderline 0 drawbacks. If you hide under your box while not in the line of sight of Blue, meaning that if you're being chased, you can just quickly turn a corner and put it on for this to count. But when you're under this box, he will turn retarded and be completely unable to find you. Even if you are literally moving with the box on your head and come into contact with him, he will never be able to kill you or even know you are there. You heard that right. If you're hiding under the box, you can't lose. So you might be thinking, okay, well with a mechanic so broken, there has to be some sort of drawback, right? You move slow. That's it. No other downside whatsoever. You just move pretty slow. You can still pick up items while you're in the box, you can still deliver the items while in the box, and there's no time limit to how fast you have to be on each night. So you can literally sit in your box the entire time and never be at a threat of losing, ever. This has to be one of the biggest oversights in all of gaming history. I fail to believe that this is what the original intent was, because this is actually laughable. There are a few attempts that I'll talk about later that try to nerf how good the box is, but those attempts also have their own drawbacks that cause the box to not be hindered at all. Additionally, there are also crawl spaces that you can crawl into to lose anything that is chasing you, but that really doesn't matter since with every character that chases you, you can just turn a corner and hide in your box. It is actually insane how broken this stupid box is. It's crazy, and because of that, in my playthrough, I didn't use the box unless I was being chased, since a very common strategy in this game is to enter your box right at the start and never leave it. Sure, the game is going to take a really long time because again, you are slow as balls while under the box, but you will win 100% of the time every time if you do. So, we've established how easy this game is, but what happens if you somehow manage to get caught by Blue or any other future threat? Well, this is where I have to give the game some credit for being really cool. You get kicked from the lobby. After being jump scared by whatever animatronics, which yes, by the way, these things are apparently animatronics, you will leave the lobby and have to restart with a new group of people, meaning that every other player in the lobby you were in will have one less person to help them for the rest of the nights. I think this is a very fun and very interesting mechanic to have in a game like this. It adds a certain feeling of teamwork when you know that if one of them gets eliminated, beating the rest of the game will become more difficult. Too bad the game actually isn't hard at all though. Night 2 brings a new problem. This time we're told we have to collect bags of food, and the reason for that will become obvious on a later night. But for now, we have a new threat to talk about: Green. Green is a very unique character. I actually really like how he works. Green is blind and cannot see you. Unlike Blue, who walks around randomly, Green has a set path that he will follow throughout the night. Occasionally, he will stop moving and start rubbing his long arms on the ground all sensually like. Talk about Riz, am I right? He treats the ground better than most husbands treat their wives. But he can't see you. You never have to worry about being chased by him. You can actually walk right past him without fear. But when he's running his arms across the ground, you have to make sure that you don't step on them. If you do, he will quickly wrap your shit up and slam you against the floor multiple times, which is absolutely brutal, I'll add. Green only ever puts one of his arms on the ground at a time. You'll notice that Green is very large and takes up the entirety of most hallways you'll find him in. But here's the part I think is pretty cool about him. When he's rubbing the ground with one of his arms, you can safely walk underneath his other arm. This is so simple, but I think it's super cool. Especially when you're deep into a run, it can make for some pretty tense moments when you have to move underneath him, hoping he doesn't choose to switch arms when you're right beneath him. And Green will be able to kill you if you're in a box, but avoiding him is so easy that you never really need to worry about being in a box in the first place. Now, Night 3, the final chapter of Night 1. Boy, is this night an interesting one. On Night 3, you need to find fuses because the power to the building went out. On this night, you're equipped with flashlights. Something I think actually adds some much needed atmosphere to this game. I personally think the game should be dark like this the entire playthrough. This night also adds two new threats: Orange and Purple. Let's talk about Purple since he's much easier to deal with. Before this night begins, we're shown that the drains in the building have started leaking. When walking near these drains, you'll notice a path separating the water marked by some footprints. When walking past these drains, you'll need to follow that path and not step in the water. If you do, Purple will come out and finger your butthole, which I'm hoping you don't want, and he's hoping you do. This alone isn't really a problem, but I think choosing to add this mechanic is actually very smart, especially with how good the placements of these drains are. It can lead to some unexpected slip-ups while being chased, which I think this game really needed, and on top of that, Purple can also kill you while you're in the box. Finally, we can talk about Orange. Oh boy, Orange. How you could have been really cool. Orange has his own room with his own little hobgoblin cave. Throughout the night, you'll need to use the food we collected on Night 2 to feed him in order to keep him at bay. If he goes too long without being fed, he will go into Rampage mode. While in Rampage mode, he will run throughout the entirety of the building, and if you're standing in his way, he will go Rampage mode on your anus. So, this actually sounds pretty interesting, right? So Dexter, what is it you're about to complain about? This mechanic sounds great. He can't kill you if you're in the box. When he goes into Rampage mode, the game will display a message stating that you forgot to feed Orange, giving you ample time to throw your box on and wait for his Rampage mode to end, which, once he makes it through the building, he'll go back to sleeping like nothing ever happened. A really cool mechanic destroyed by the stupid f***ing box. I think this game would be 10 times better if the box was removed completely. You already have places to hide like crawl spaces and lockers. You don't also need to add a box you can hide under at any time. It just makes the game far too easy. And I'm not against easy games either, by the way. But when you have a mechanic that nullifies almost every character in the game, that's too easy. After collecting all the fuses, the night ends, and the mystery man tells us that he'll let us go after he throws us a party with some cake. This is gonna be a trap, isn't it? Yes. The answer is yes. This final night takes place in a room we haven't been in yet. The room's floor is covered in balloons, and Blue is sleeping on a large stage. You have to sneak past him without touching and popping the balloons. If you pop one, he'll get up and chase you. Once every remaining player gets past him, a fucking balloon pops anyways like a bitch and a final chase sequence ensues. Blue chases you through some vents and into a room with a wooden plank on top of some blocks. You have to push the blocks over to get the plank to fall, which you can then use as a ramp to continue running away. You eventually get outside, crawl underneath a fence, and Blue almost gets decapitated before crawling back into his little goon cave. And with the remaining survivors, you breathe a sigh of relief, and Chapter 1 comes to a close, with the mystery man being hella pissed. And that's what Chapter 1 has to offer. I don't want to waste any time, so let's hop right into Chapter 2. Chapter 2 seems to continue right after Chapter 1. We're running through the woods presumably to find help, but I guess we're actually deciding to run to the amusement park instead because we're retarded. We see an old man trying to cut open a fence. When he notices us, he acts pretty sussy and hides the giant shears behind his back. He tells us he can help us and leads us to the amusement park, and the game begins. Night 1 of Chapter 2 reintroduces us to some of the characters from Chapter 1. Blue, green, and purple. Green and blue function the exact same way as they did in the previous game, but purple works a bit differently. But before I talk about purple, I need to talk about what it is we're collecting. Just like Chapter 1, each night has us collect multiple of a single object and bring them back to a central hub area. Where in Chapter 1 that was the theater, in Chapter 2 it's a laser tag lobby. And on Night 1 we need to collect a bunch of light bulbs to make some bat signal type shit. Anyways, back to talking about the butthole tickler, purple. Purple works very differently from how he worked in Chapter 1. This map is noticeably larger than the last one, and Purple actually has his own area. At a very low section of the map, there's an area with a lot of fog on the ground. If you step into this fog, after 2 seconds, Purple will start to chase you, although only his hands will be visible. Purple is significantly faster than the player, so you better know where you're going if you're going to step into the fog. But there's one teeny tiny problem with this. There is a very high chance that you will never have to step into the fog. There are some rocks on the ground that give you some safe places to stand, and on these rocks, items have a chance of spawning. But if no items spawn on the rocks throughout your playthrough, you never have to touch the fog, making Purple a character you'd never come into contact with. Also, a fun little side note, if you just crouch, Purple can't kill you, so that's awesome. Night 1 only having characters we've seen before makes total sense, reintroducing us to the characters and how they work. Hey, post-research Dexter here, sliding this into the script to say that as I'm writing this, I forgot the order of the items you collect, so I was reading over the wiki to remember, and learned that I had a very large misunderstanding of this game. I've been saying nights up until this point, but apparently each, quote, night I've mentioned has actually only been an hour of a single night. I don't know how I got it in my head that each challenge was a separate night, but whatever, I'll be calling them hours from now on. Sorry. Hour 2 has us collect gas canisters. Why do you ask? Well, the old goon thought that he'd use a battering ram to help us escape. Why the f*** is there a battering ram in this amusement park? I have no idea, but we're going to pretend like this is normal and not insane. This hour introduces a brand new threat, Yellow. Yellow is a stupid-looking pterodactyl with goofy eyes. I love Yellow. I didn't fully understand the extent of how he worked until after my first initial playthrough, so of course, I don't have any of my own footage for a lot of what he does, so I'll have to use someone else's for this. Yellow works the same as Blue. He will walk around the map, and when he spots you, he will start to chase you. He's also just as stupid as Blue, and being in your box completely breaks him. When he catches you, unlike every other character, he doesn't immediately kill you. Instead, he grabs you with his talons and starts flying while carrying you to his nest. For the part I didn't know while playing this for the first time is that you can actually escape his grasp while he's carrying you. And if you escape while he's flying you above the bounce house, you will actually survive the fall by landing on the bounce house and be able to continue. This essentially makes him a very safe character to help you escape from bad situations, where if you're being cornered by a bunch of bullshit, you can safely get caught by Yellow and have him take you away from the problem. But of course, if you don't escape, he'll eat your head, and then he'll eat your head. Pause. After collecting all the canisters, we use the battering ram and blow up a f***ing wall, leading to a bunch of little tiny goons to spray out. This pisses off the big red dude, who according to the wiki is a scientist, so I guess that's pretty cool. The scientist is so mad about this, he kidnaps our old man friend and places him on the top of one of those piss your pants drop rides. He places a bunch of dynamite on the seats and has it slowly begin to rise. That's right, the new threat of this hour isn't a new character, but a time limit, something I think this game greatly benefits from, since it directly counters your box. Another interesting thing about this night is the items you have to collect. They're not actually items, and instead these tiny little colored creatures. And the interesting part about them is, unlike every other item we've had to collect so far, these little idiots can actually move around the map. This doesn't really add any extra difficulty, but it's something cool I thought I'd mention. Hour 4 is something else, I'll tell you what. The old gooner thanks us for saving him and says that if we can move this giant colored guy, which I guess is called a lookie, then we'll be able to use a minecart system to escape. But in order to get the lookie to move, we need to bake a cake to lure him out. So for this hour, we need to collect a bunch of sugar. This hour's new threat is pretty fun, I think. Cyan. Cyan works almost the same as blue and yellow. She walks around, and when she sees you, she'll chase you and kill you if she catches you. So what's different? Well, even though hiding in your box does work on Cyan, if you move while in your box, she'll actually be able to hear you. This again doesn't sound bad, but I've had a few situations where, since there are so many characters in this chapter, sometimes they'll all pile up in the same location, and having Cyan and Green in the same spot can lead to an issue I came across. Usually I wouldn't hide in a box when Green was near me because he can't see me anyways. But if Cyan is nearby, I need to hide, so I get in my box. But since Green is so close, if I don't move, he'll catch me. But if I move while in my box, Cyan will hear me and kill me. I think this is something the game needs a lot more of. There needs to be more synergy between characters. As frustrating as it can be to be in a situation like this, it adds such another great level of complexity to this game that I feel it desperately needs. On hour 5, we finish baking the cake and make the lookie move and hop into a minecart. While riding the minecart, you'll see splitting paths, and you'll have to lean on the minecart to make yourself go the correct way and not immediately f***ing die. While on this minecart, you'll be greeted by every character you've seen in this chapter as they try to eat your butt. Just when we're seemingly safe, Cyan appears and the final chase commences. After climbing under another fence, Cyan realizes she can't reach us and retreats back into the amusement park, ending Chapter 2. And with Chapter 2 being over, that ends this video. I'm sure there will eventually be more chapters added to this game, and when they do get added, if you'd like to hear me talk about them, I'd be glad to make a follow-up video. Overall, Rainbow Friends is a very interesting game. It definitely has several flaws which I've pointed out in this video, but with a few tweaks, I think this game could actually be a nice breath of fresh air in the mascot horror genre. Playing this game is honestly very fun and kind of addicting. Whenever you beat a chapter, you get a veteran number added to your account, and you can see other players' veteran numbers while playing. At first, I'd see numbers that were in the hundreds, and I couldn't understand how somebody could play this game over and over for that long. But after trying my best to get into this game myself, I actually understand. This game is fun to play, and I think all of that has to go to how they integrated multiplayer into this game. I can see myself playing this game again in my free time, and I might even do some fun challenge runs on Dexter Black if you'd all be interested in seeing that. So, to answer the question of this video, is Rainbow Friends even good? I think that answer is an undeniable yes. Even looking at all of its flaws, it is very easy to say that this game is good, with a clear amount of passion put into it. But that's all I've got for Rainbow Friends. Let me know what you think in the comments. As of writing this script, the question of the video in my last video actually hasn't been asked yet, since that video is still being edited, so instead, I'll just be asking a question in this video. The question of this video is, what is your favorite Roblox horror game, and why? With the question of the video being asked, I've been Dexter, and I'll see you all in the next video. See ya!